working, I became, as people who know me, I was really obsessed about the work world and especially the unequal power relations. And I really felt I moved to the union movement because I wanted to see some democracy on the job. And I also saw a lot of injustice, a lot of people being treated really poorly. And I saw the union movement as a way of addressing some of those inequities. So that's how I became an activist. And
you worked in nursing?
Yes, I was a nurse for almost 40 years. And so I was unionized. I was a non-union nurse for a period of time, and I wanted to work in a unionized situation. So I was with the city and county, which is organized by SEIU.
Mm-hmm. Okay. How did you happen to meet Maria Guillen?
Well, we were in the same local. She's in a different field. She's in social services, but we're still in the same union, which is another reason I really like being in a union that represents lots of different kind of workers.
Were you surprised that the San Francisco Living Wage Coalition chose Maria Guillen as Labor Woman of the Year?
No, I'm not surprised at all. She's a wonderful candidate and really deserving of this. And it's hard to be in the union movement in general, and especially during this period of terrible attacks. And I think we need to honor each other and be kind to each other so that we can move forward. And I think reflecting on some of the best activists, it gives us all courage to move forward. So I think she's a really good choice. And I think in a democratic organization, there's certain way things have to get done, and you just have to move through that. And she's really figured out process, and you want to figure out how to do something, it's good to go to Maria and talk to her about it, because she'll have thought it through. Mm-hmm. And I really appreciate that about her, and think that there's something there we can all learn.
Mm-hmm. And I came of age during the Vietnam War, and like a lot of people in my generation, it had a huge effect on me. I think it had a pretty permanent effect in terms of seeing what was going on over there. When I started working in social services when I was in my 20s, I began working in nonprofits, and I think nonprofit workers, as many of us know, do very important work, often with marginalized communities, but the agencies tend to be very underfunded, and I first became involved in an organizing campaign that was already ongoing at a local organization for autistic kids, and then later at the ARC San Francisco, I was lead member organizer when we were organizing with SEIU in the late 80s. And through SEIU 10 to 1, and also through the San Francisco Labor Council, that's how I met Maria. And I think one thing, there are many things that stand out about Maria because she's an exceptional person, but one thing that stands out for me just right now is when the merger happened in 2007, I had been a member of SEIU Local 535. There were many nonprofit workers in 535 and people in social services, and then suddenly we were in 10 to 1, which is a merger of 10 locals from Northern California, and it was a very unsettling experience to find out that in some instances we were not welcome in our own labor hall in San Francisco, the nonprofit members. I think that's changed a great deal for the better now, and I think that Maria is one of the reasons that has changed. She was one of the first members to really welcome us, embrace us, to understand that the situation of nonprofit workers is like that of many other union workers, except that we're paid even less. So her support meant a great deal to me. And seeing Maria in many contexts over the years at both the Labor Council, at San Francisco COPE meetings, and just in the labor movement in general, I was just struck repeatedly at how principled Maria is, what a great egalitarian sense she has. She's involved in many other organizations outside of our union, including many Latino organizations. She was, as Linda Ray mentioned, she was very involved in helping get the Domestic Workers Bill of Rights passed. There's so many things, it would take hours to list all the things that Maria has done, and in many, I would say in the vast majority of cases, a lot of people don't even know how much she's done as not just a rank and file activist, she's also now on the executive board of the San Francisco Labor Council. But I know right now there's a huge fight to save San Francisco City College, and the whole community has gotten involved in that fight to support not only students at City College, but also the AFT 2121 staff there, and also our own members, SEIU 10-to-1 members who are working there. And I think Maria has been tireless in her efforts to bring all the various stakeholders at City College and in the community together to work in a positive, towards a positive outcome for both our SEIU and our AFT 21 members.
Throughout the years, the labor movement has had many ups and downs, but Maria continues to build worker power through her participation in SEIU and in Jobs with Justice.
I'm really inspired by the words of Eugene Debs.
It will be a shame to admit that I have risen from the ranks. When I rise, it will be with the ranks and not from the ranks.
And that's where I'm at. It's all still so pertinent. And in any movement, there's struggles. But when you think about it, nothing has really made a difference in working people's lives like the labor movement. You have X amount of vacation hours accrued and sick leave time accrued. That's not something the city just said, oh, you know what? I think this would be really good for workers. Let's just bestow this on them. No, it was members like yourself that struggled for this. And so it's a fight. It's a struggle.
So what keeps Maria continually working for social and economic justice? She reflects back on a heated fight she had with her parents one summer when she was back from Chico. She was challenging their perceptions when her dad blew up.
My father even went so far as to say, well, if that's how you feel, then tomorrow morning you leave my house. So the next morning I got ready and I was trying to gather my things, and he came into the room and he said, Mija, forget what I said yesterday. He goes, I was wrong. How I feel is that if the world had more people like you, it would be a better place. And that always stayed with me. The fact that he would apologize, my father, but it also signaled to me that I had to live up to what I was saying, right? I had to really help to make the world a better place.
Well, I want to remember a great fighter for human rights, John Fromer. Let's hear it for John. Now in the spirit world, accompanying us in the wind, in the breeze, in the songs, in the summer heat, in the flowers, in the jade plant. We used to do this song together. And it's got the international language of all the languages in the world. Goes like this. La 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 la, la 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 la, la 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 la. Oh, la 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 sing with your mouth full if you still have food or cookies. Ready? One more time. La 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 la. Eso. La 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 la. Whoa, ha. La 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 la. One more time. La 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 la. Give that man a lighter. La 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 la. La 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 la. We are the power of the river. We are the rain within the storm. We are the force beneath the ocean. We are the power. Ready? La 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 la, hey I oh, hey I oh. Let's hear you. La la, one more time, stronger. La 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 la, hey oh. We build up and we tear down. We hold a vision of the future that makes this world go round. La 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 la, hey I oh. La 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 la, hey I oh. La 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 la. Stronger together, harmony. La la la, hey I oh.
What was your major?
I majored in English and world history. And that summer, when it looked like I would have no other options other than to go to Canada or go to jail, I decided to take one last trip, and I went overseas to Europe. And I was living and working in Europe when I found out that a warrant had been put out for my arrest for not showing up for the induction into the military. So after evading the authorities in several countries for about a year, I finally got picked up by the French police, who took me into...
Was this in Paris?
This was in Paris. And they took me into the office of the Bureau of Sûreté Nationale. And they showed me a rather thick document of everywhere that I had been and people that I had talked to, and transcripts of telephone conversations that I had, and contents of letters that I'd written. And I was pretty shocked by it all. And I sat very quietly and read it for about an hour. They were very patient with me. And after about an hour, they asked me if I understood. And I told them, yeah, I did understand it, but I didn't know what it meant.
The files were in English and French?
Mostly in English. They were compiled by Interpol. For whatever reason, since I was not really accused of any criminal activity, I was just didn't show up for my draft call. I was stunned to think that our government was spending those kinds of resources to follow every guy who didn't show up for the draft call. So anyway, the two French police officers went over into the corner and talked amongst each other for a while, and then they came back and said that France was not fighting in this bloody war, and that they were offering me political asylum. So that began a period of time where I lived and worked in France for about 8 years. And during that time, I got involved in two things that were very important to me. One was the struggle against the war. There was a rather large community of war resistors and military deserters living in Paris at that time. France was giving political asylum to war resistors and military deserters and war resistors, but with the proviso that there would be no publicity and that we could not publicly speak out or publish or in any way draw attention to ourselves. We continued, however, to meet, and we published, I think, 2 or 3 different versions of a newspaper, and each time we published it, it was confiscated by the French police. And then I think the 3rd or 4th time that we put together a newsletter and sent it out, we were not stopped, and it was not confiscated. And I think one of the things that caught my attention was about 2 weeks after we sent out the first edition, we got a letter from Pete Seeger with $50 in it, and he wanted a subscription. On a regular basis, there were huge demonstrations in the streets of Paris with hundreds of thousands of people from all walks of life and protesting the war in Vietnam. And at every demonstration was a large contingent which was referred to as the Les Soldats Blancs de Ho Chi Minh. And they were the French soldiers who had deserted from the French army to fight alongside the forces of Ho Chi Minh.
Well, these experiences reveal how you evolved from a good Catholic boy from Sacramento to an internationalist and someone struggling for international labor solidarity. Do you recognize Allan Fisher as a similar being, as a kindred soul?
I think I recognized a kindred soul in Allan Fisher from the minute I met him. We were both teachers at the mission campus, teaching English as a second language here at City College. And so many of our students were refugees or immigrants from Latin American countries, obviously suffering from, if not political repression, economic repression. Allan is phenomenal. I wonder sometimes if there isn't a struggle for peace and justice somewhere that he has not been involved in. And that's from Asia. He's traveled in China, he's traveled in Vietnam, he's traveled in Cuba, he's traveled in many countries in Latin America.
Peru this summer and in Colombia.
Yeah. And we just recently went to Allan's house, and his family had just returned from El Salvador, and it was absolutely delightful to listen to his presentation, and especially the presentation of his son and daughter, Jessica and Randy, who have also become very committed to the struggle there, and are doing a lot to help ensure that what happened in Honduras a few years ago in the overthrowing of Zelaya doesn't happen in El Salvador. I mean, we're thrilled that a member of the teachers union there is now president of El Salvador. And this is something
from the FMLN.
None of these things surprise me. Allan, Allan is a leading light in not only struggles around the world, but he was president of our local for 2 terms, and he's been on the executive board for 25 years.
And very active in the Labor Council.
You can always count on Allan to have a very clear-headed perspective on what it is we should be doing, and you can always count on Allan to be right there in the forefront doing it, not just analyzing it and describing what should be done, but actually doing it.
Isn't it a shame that we don't have more families like the Fisher family and fewer like the Bush family?
Yeah. No comparison.
Well, we went to El Salvador as international elections observers. My parents and I were there for the general election at the end of January, and then I returned by myself for the runoff.
Mm-hmm.
And we worked really hard. Both my dad and I were interviewed in the newspaper and the radio, I believe on television. We did a lot of work with CSPES in order to legitimize the election results and shed light on the new election process.
Were you always an enthusiastic supporter of your parents' political goals?
Since a young age, my dad always talked to me about politics. I can remember having conversations with him, maybe being only 6 or 7 years old, and asking him, you know, what is communism? What is capitalism? And him explaining to me, you know, that these are systems and what they consist of, and having really lively conversations about that. And my family always jokes that, you know, since a super young age, you could ask me who the president was, and I always knew. But I did feel really rebellious for many years. I sort of resented the fact that I was dragged to protest after protest and meetings and events and all kinds of things, and I didn't always want to go. And my dad always, you know, said, well, you know, if it's not great, we can leave. And usually once we got there, I always enjoyed what was going on and I didn't want to leave. But it was hard to motivate me to have a better attitude about going with him. But as a preteen and as a teenager, I definitely, you know, led a rebellious San Francisco teenage life. And I think it wasn't until I went to college and I became a, you know, politics and Latin American and Latino studies major, and that other classmates of mine would ask me, how do you know about this stuff? Why do you know these things already? And I would always joke and tell them that it's because, you know, I've been in training by my dad since I could talk. And also I think the greatest gift my father ever gave me was the gift of being able to think critically. He always, you know, has really strong views about things, but he never, it was never the type of situation where I believed something just because he believed it. He always stressed that I needed to find my own way and question even his beliefs and really try and figure things out for myself. And in a lot of ways, we have very, very similar ideas about social justice and politics, but we also have our differences, and I owe that to him for sure. He went on a delegation last November, and my uncle joked that he should find him a bulletproof vest on eBay, and said he would look up how much it costs to get one. But my dad is so, he's not fazed by anywhere that people claim to be dangerous, really, especially when he's doing social justice work. And I remember feeling really anxious about him going there in light of the coup and high murder rate and everything
Most
going
dangerous.
on.
Tegucigalpa was
Right.
the most dangerous city in the world at
Right.
that time.
And, but then I went on a delegation to Honduras in January before I went to El Salvador to be an election observer. And as soon as I stepped off the plane and exited the airport, I felt like this is where I'm supposed to be. I felt like the reason that had brought me there, which was to participate in the march against the fraudulent fraudulently elected president and to, you know, meet with the Frente. And I mean, when you're doing social justice work, it feels like everything else just kind of fades into the background.
Come on, people, now song. When I say forever, got out this song. Solidarity forever. People cry for solidarity forever. With the union, yeah, the union makes us strong.
Bravo! Bravo! Bravo!